think the imposter syndrome, like, I still get it. Everybody still gets it a little bit, right? I think my journey to where I am today was absolutely not what I expected. It was very surprising to me. I got my first laptop when I was at school, and I kind of excelled in some of the IT courses. And at the time, I actually wanted to do science, more physics-based. But then my sister, who's 7 years older than me, then came to Hull to do physics, and I was like, I don't want to copy her. I want to do something else. So my teacher at the time was like, go do computers. You're good at it, try it. And I was like, okay, yeah. I looked at some opportunities, and I got into Hull College at the time. And I hit that wall where I was like, this isn't for me. I was meeting people who had already done so much more than I had, and I didn't have the same foundation. I remember my first day was very embarrassing. Somebody was like, oh, hi, how are you? We got talking a little bit, and they're like, what languages do you know? And I'm like, English, bit of French. And it's like, no. And I was like, oh, it's like I instantly realized what they meant. And I'm like, I wanted to go into a hall. But after a while, getting closer with my classmates and getting to a point where I was helping them figure stuff out, because I'm like, no, it's like this, you understand? And you start to realize that everybody has something they're good at, and it's not all the same thing. It's super broad in what you can do and what you can be good at. So I stuck with it, and I came back and I tried again. And that's when I started looking at university and higher education. Ended up looking around quite a bit. I thought I'd left it too late to get into university for a while, because it was getting really close to that deadline where you needed to apply. And I'm like, I've not decided yet. I don't know what to do. And it was then when I started visiting places, and I visited the whole campus, and I went to Hive. I looked around, and I was like, I can see myself here. And there was people who were already here who I knew a bit about, and I was like, oh, I know you. Good to meet you again. And they told me a bit about their experiences, and I was like, that sounds like something I can get behind. I like the idea. So obviously started university. My first year, I think my confidence had been knocked a little with programming. So I remember there was two options. There was programming 1 and then advanced programming, was it? I really regret choosing programming 1, because I was like, right, I need to get back to basics. I'd just learned a language I wasn't really sure about. I was doing Python at college, and I was like, I don't like it. I don't see how it melds with what I'd already learned. And programming 1 was just all the stuff I already knew, and it was very dry. And I was looking at the advanced programming, and I was like, oh, they're doing some really cool stuff. Ugh. So I started doing a lot more in my own personal time as well, learning off of Stack Overflow, YouTube, trying to reach out to people, figure out my own problems as well. And I think that gave me more of an appetite to do more. So that's how I wanted to join Comp Sci Society and get involved in game jams, and just because I felt like my first year was very just getting back into the environment and getting used to it. It gave me some time to make friends and build relationships outside of that, which came in really handy in the second year and the third year, because obviously I could then fall back on those experiences a little bit. And it was only then in the third year where I started doing my dissertation, and Corona hit, and I had to just be at home alone, isolated, working on it. And there was no physical lectures anymore. It was all online, and it was just, it got quite depressing for a while. And it's now, even in the industry, I see people look back and they're like, oh yeah, my dissertation was this and it was incredible. And oh, my PhD project, it's like, I don't like my dissertation. And by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, oh, I'm embarrassed. It's like one of those things where it didn't turn out the way I wanted, and I just had to make up for it by writing about why it failed and what was wrong with it and what I would do better. And that brought the marks back up, and I was like, okay, cool. I've learned from my mistake now. But then when I actually started thinking about employment as well, I started working with some artists called Studio Maguire who do a lot of visual projection stuff. So that was very artist-driven and artist-heavy. And I think they got to a point where they wanted something that was almost impossible or something I couldn't deliver to them. And it gave me this, well, actually the sense of like imposter syndrome, which is a really huge problem in computer science because you meet other people and you're like, God, you are so much better than me. Like, you know so much more than I do, but you don't realize that you might know things that they don't know, or you have the potential to do something they would never dream of doing. So yeah, I did that for a while. And then that was when I met Visor a little bit, and they were just moving some products they already had onto Android. And I was like, oh, I did Android in my dissertation. And they're like, can we see it? And I'm like, no. But I explained what I'd learned and like what I could do. And they're like, oh, that sounds useful. Come in and do some part-time work and help us build this. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And it was after that where I'd kind of learned a lot of they have a bespoke like internal networking layer called Vertex. And like I'd learned a little bit of that, and like I didn't want to give it up, and they were like, you should come work for us, come do more time. So it got to a point where I was doing less for Studio Maguire because that was part-time and more for Visor. And I think I've been full-time for like a year and a half now. I graduated in 2020.
The interesting bit that you mentioned was the imposter syndrome. I think we all kind of have that when you come to university for the first time and you see these people that have been coding for, like Neil's son, for 15, 25 years type thing. He's only 18, but he's got 25 years experience. He's like this uber kind of coder. But you're benchmarking yourself against them, aren't you? Because you're like, wow, this guy can do everything. Or girl, let's be honest now. There's more. I definitely think computer science has always been inclusive. It's good to see more women in the industry as well.
Yeah, I think the imposter syndrome, like, everybody still gets it a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
But Visor definitely like smashed that for me a little bit, just by, I guess, because we're a smaller company. There's a lot of big problems we tackle. It's like we're a Microsoft mixed reality partner. We have like companies in other countries asking us to help them figure out this problem. They have no idea, and we're like, that's easy. We do that all the time. It's why they ask us. And even like inside of the company, like I started off as an Android developer, and then I learned more about Unity and Vertex, and then I started doing like the VR side of it. And then suddenly we had a hardware project where we had to build like this tracking VR, like tracking volume. And it's like, okay, we need somebody who can do CAD. And my employer, who'd like learned a little bit about me, is like, oh, you cosplay, don't you? You do costumes. You like making stuff.
Oh,
like you've been to
awesome.
the makerspace. And I was like, yeah. It's like, okay, here's Fusion 360. Teach yourself some of this. We have some 3D printers in the server room. Have a go at it. And I remember I had to build like a waterproof case for a radio module to go on the back of a HoloLens. So it was like making it form-fitting to this like technology I'd not seen before, and making it waterproof as well with 3D printers. So I was like, oh.
It'd be a lot easier than like a cosplay, like chest plate. Like,
yeah, honestly, I was like, this is so much harder than I thought. It looked so easy. But then by the end of it, I was like, actually, I've made that only took me like 3 weeks to learn. That was good. That was easy. And then that went on to okay, make the circuit boards now. Design the circuit boards, and okay, now you're going to learn like SMD soldering. So you got little tweezers with tiny bits, and you're putting them in the oven. And it's just like, when I went to uni, I never thought I'd be like making like microelectronic like boards to do stuff like
That's awesome.
on oil rigs or whatever. It's it wasn't what I expected at all. But it was definitely like being in Hull, having that wide range of experiences and like different courses where you try a little bit of everything, and if you like it, that's when you teach yourself more about it. You've got to put in the extra time if you want to learn more about it, but don't take like the sample board for granted either. Like do a little bit of everything if you can, and talk to people who are doing the courses that you haven't chosen, because then you go, oh, you're on the game design course, like what are you doing? Oh, that sounds really cool. Can you tell me a bit about that? Oh, we do this. And it's like, you can still try everything as long as you put the time in as well.
I think there's one thing that I've taken away from all of that is like, we don't know everything. We all specialize, and we all come together to find solutions. And in my team, like when we have new people join, one of the key things that I tend to try and get across early on is like, I'll ask a question, it'd be kind of like, and if you don't know the answer, just say, don't make it up, just tell me honestly that you don't understand, and I'll teach you. And it's that, when you first kind of take your first job, I don't know, you want to impress, don't you? So you try and make out that you know everything, whereas actually we know this tiny little bit about everything at the company or that area. So one of the first things I do is kind of like try and help them understand that if you don't know, ask. When we're here to help and support you, and it sounds like you're getting that as well.
Yeah,
it's
that's
helps you
something I had
develop.
to learn quite quickly. It's just like, it's okay if you don't know this. I just want you to try it.
Yeah.
And if you want some help, ask me. But it's interesting where you're saying in your company, you're helping people specialize into what they want to do. Visa feels a lot more like they want you to try everything and be good at everything. And it's just like you don't get much of a chance to specialize until you're like 3 or 4 years into the company, or you really latch on to something, because we're always like trying something new, and we're not on one topic long enough always to like dedicate yourself to it.
It is interesting what you say there, though, about you definitely do start to specialize at some point, or you tend to find your own place in a company. I've worked at 3 or 4 companies, and it's normally like year 1, you're just trying to learn how they work and learning about the technologies and things, and then it's year 2 really that you actually start to find your role in that company, and you do actually specialize in some areas and you become the expert. That is quite interesting. And then from year 2 onwards, that's when you are an expert and you really grow. So it's like, for people that kind of taking your first jobs, I definitely think obviously stick at it for a couple of years, because you've got to learn, and then 2, 3, 4 years is when you're going to get all the benefit of that hard graft you put in.
Yeah, I've been there for 1.5 years currently, and I still don't know my job title. I couldn't put my finger on it, to be honest. It's like I'm just like, mixed reality developer, but what does that mean? It doesn't really reflect what I do. It's like I'm also like R&D, and I'm helping this project. Like, it's like R&D is good because it's like a bit of everything. You just try it out, see if it works. That lines up with what it is. But especially with the sense of going back to imposter syndrome, I was still feeling that a little bit until last week. I was sick on Monday, and I was just like, oh, they'll be fine without me. And then Lewis messaged me and was just like, the team's completely lost without you. They're panicking because Megan's not in today. And I was just like, oh, that's not good. I'll help. But